G'day guys, in today's episode we're going to be rebuilding this steering rod and I'm replacing old bushings and I'm cleaning it up. So let's get to it. I've tried loosening this tie rod but it is very tight. I'm going to have to heat up this joint to try to loosen the metal off, loosen that bond. So to do that I'm going to remove this broken boot just so that it doesn't burn, and then we're going to see what a little bit of heat can do. Right, that's the old tie rod removed. You can see the damage on that thread there. Good thing we're going to get new ones. Now I'll remove this nut here. Both tie rods have been removed. I'm going to let this cool down and then I'm going to remove these boots, which look like they're really worse for wear. You can see that they're starting to crack, so we'll be replacing them. And then I'll see, once we disassemble this, whether or not I can fit at least this middle section into the sandblaster. I'm going to have a hand at removing this old boot now. I don't mind if damage it because this boot is already ripped and deteriorating. It's really old, so you know it'll be pretty sensible to replace it at this stage. So this bushing here is pretty solidly connected now to this steering rod. I'll figure out a way to remove it because we'll be replacing this alongside the boots. For now, we'll work on the other side. This boot's shot to shit as well. I'm just going to replace it. These ball joints look really good though. Moving freely. We're going to need to replace them. All I'll do is change out the grease or re-grease, clean up and re-grease. It's really cool. You can watch how the steering works as you spin the wheel and that rod moves nice and freely. I'm just feeling now how freely that moves, and I'll be pleased to say that it's very smooth. Can't feel any grit or interference. Alright, all we need to do is get into this section and remove the bushings here and here. A little bit of research and you'll see that there's a difference between these boots. This one, which has the lip and came with these springs, and this one that has this little nozzle doesn't come with that big lip and was connected with cable ties. Did my research and this is the OEM boot. So this boot, either it's been replaced by an OEM part which is no longer being manufactured, so God knows how old it is, while this one is a universal fitment boot. The difference is that from Repco, this guy costs $57, while this guy, which is a universal fit, is on clearance at the moment for $8. So I definitely know which option I'm going to go with. I've done my research on these two bushings which I removed, and these are OEM. That is to say, these are 33 years old. Luckily, I've been able to find a seller online that provides these as new old stock, which is fantastic. little bit of elbow grease comes in. Got myself some Scotch-Brite, and I am just removing all of that built up junk from the steering rack, and it's coming up with a nice polish. So I'll keep on doing that, and eventually it'll look as good as new. It's just a matter of elbow grease at this stage. So I've tested how much wriggle room there is in this system, and it's really tight. Steering isn't loose at all, and because of that, I'm not going to remove the steering pinion. I'm going to leave it within the steering rack. The only thing I really want to do at this stage is give it a good clean up. Up my steering rack, and it's come up, steering box here has come up an absolute treat. I'm really happy with it. And now the only thing I need to do is I'm going to repaint this section here with chassis paint, because the OEM part was covered in a powder coating. The Haynes manual doesn't really include information, but the OEM service manual from Subaru did. It says that this part here, the spring, is to be greased within there before reinstalling and refurbishing. I'm just going to be using some moly paste. So this is the steering rack. It has been completely refurbished, including steering rods, and we've hammered the plates back in. All I need to do now is add some additional grease to the steering rod here and on the other side, and then we can replace the boots, and once the tie downs arrive, we'll put new tie downs on. I'm really happy with how this has turned out. It looks as good as new. We're finally nearing the end, I think. The steering system is getting to a point where we're starting to finesse and replace mostly the bushings and any of the sort of rubber components. So this is the steering rod. I've decided against replacing the universal joint, primarily because it's moving really freely. I don't feel any grit at all, and it's come up really well with a quick cleanup and brush. The steering coupling though, the steering coupling is a completely different matter. I'm going to show you why. This is the original steering coupling. As you can see, the rubber is starting to really wear away. If I was a tyre, that would be out of X. I've redone the bolts, blackened them, cleaned them up. But this, not looking good. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a bizarre size, and it took a while to, fingers crossed, I've been able to order a part that is equivalent to this dimension, and I'll show you what I've got. This is the part that I've ordered online as a replacement to the steering coupling. Nolithane 41025. I'm hesitating because I'm not convinced, I'm not sure that this dimension is going to be what I need. I measured up the dimensions between the original and this new one, and I'm just fingers crossed it's close enough that we can do a direct replace. So let's see how we go, and I'm not confident. What I'm going to do is have a look at the relative componentry. For example, bolts, relative size. So these are the new ones. You can have a look. Slightly longer, slightly wider, definitely cleaner. So if you have a look at that, you see that angle? It's just a little too out. I wonder if we can make it work. Even though these steering couplings are by definition designed to have a bit of flex in them. And you can see, if we show you real up close here, you can see that there's a slight camber and how the coupling is sitting to accommodate the difference in diameter requirements between these pieces. My biggest issue now is that this piece, this coupling, needs to situate back onto the steering system, and look at this. You see that? Slightly out. So close, but no cigar. I have some good news and I have some bad news. The good news is that after a significant amount of, I think the term faffing works here, a significant amount of faffing about, the coupling fits and is functional. The bad thing is that I've probably screwed up a little bit. It's taken a lot of time and effort to get this coupling in, and yet in order to reinstall this process, this system, we're going to have to remove this part, because if you remember, I had to take this off in order to get this up under and through the engine bay. So I'm going to have to take this off again, and then even more frustratingly, I'm going to need to install this in situ within the car itself, and it was already a pain in the ass to install using a vise and using just a bench, let alone in the confines of a car where reach is really quite poor. So that's a future me problem, I think, and we're going to take this as a learning step and process. So onwards and upwards, I suppose. Next, we're going to be having a looking at how bare these guys are. So I've got a couple of these guys from Repco, and they're just universal and they're pretty, shall I say, cheap, accessible. And I figure the amount of parts I'm going to be replacing over time, it just makes sense to get cheap parts that work and that are consumable where possible. Just going to give us a side-by-side comparison between the original boots that we're replacing and the new ones. And you can see just the quality, right, of the rubber. Given I think I got these on sale for like something like $14 or less than 20 bucks a piece. Replacing the boots is a good thing. To do that, pretty simple. I'm going to be using some semi-fluid steering box grease to lube up that ball joint there and fill this up as much as I possibly can. And then tie them down with some cable ties. But before we do that, I'm also going to show you the replacement parts for these two catastrophically destroyed and disgusting bushings. I did a lot of research and I thought that I had selected the correct bushings, but unfortunately that's not the case. I got these guys off of eBay. They said fit for vehicle and it was Subaru specific. Unfortunately, it's a no dice. This one fits for sure. Unfortunately, this part here, which is supposed to replace this bushing, which fits nice and snugly here, it's just too wide a diameter. I've had a lot of bad luck with bushings. Look at that. See, there's too much play. There's way too much play. So I've ordered new old spare, or new old stock I should say, of this part specifically from Subaru, and we'll replace them with those. It's a little bit more expensive. It's a little bit of a waste of money, but this is the car game. So in the meantime, I'm going to install this bushing, and we will be able to install one of the boots, but not both. I can install the boot on the far side, but the boot on this side here is going to have to wait until we've installed the bushing. So I'm going to be reinstalling the boot, a new one, onto the steering rack, and what I've done is I've checked the old video to remember exactly how we had this original boot installed. There are two parts that I'm looking for with the cable ties. We've got this section here, which if you have a look, we have this section here, which is where the boot will sit and be attached with the cable tie. And similarly, with this section here, where the boot will sit. And inside here, we're going to grease this up with a lot of that steering grease. Perhaps testament to how this build's going to go, we didn't get as far as I had hoped on rebuilding this steering rack. This boot's in, steering's on, coupling has been proven, But for now, we are on hold because we are waiting for NOS spare bushing to install here. And then we can put the other boot on. And then I've got 2 tie rods coming in the post, and they should be here any day now. But overall, this is how it's looking, albeit it's really quite greasy at the moment. So like, look, whoa, slippery. I'm really happy with how it's turned out. A little bit frustrating around the bushings. I have a feeling that that's just going to be case, I suppose, just something that I'm going to have to get used to. I'm going to be very careful with making sure when I order things that they are going to fit the Brumby. It is a little bit difficult because obviously Brumby is out of production now. So some of these parts, like the manufacturer numbers and whatnot, they're all discontinued. So we're trying to find parts which are still in production that will fit the model. So that's all right. It's part of the journey and I'm definitely learning. So that's the important part, I guess. Anyway, until next time, thanks guys.